Captain Jake Morrison walked across the bridge of the HMS Horizon. The ship was huge and filled with the best crew Earth had ever sent into deep space. They had been traveling for 3 months now, looking for new worlds and checking the empty. Areas between stars. Jake was a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes. He had been in space for 15 years, and this was his biggest mission yet. The Horizon was not just any ship. It was the most advanced exploration vessel humans had ever built, with 200 crew members and enough supplies to stay in space for 2 years. Lieutenant Amy Carter sat at her station, watching the communication systems. She was young, maybe 25, with short brown hair and quick fingers that moved across her controls like a musician playing an instrument. Amy had joined the crew because she wanted to be the first person to hear from aliens if they ever found any. "Captain, I'm getting something strange," Amy said, looking up from her screen. Her voice was excited, but also worried. Jake walked over to her station. "What kind of strange?" "It's a signal, sir, but not like anything we've seen before. It's coming from a star system about 3 light years away. The system isn't on any of our maps." Dr. Peter Collins looked up from his own workstation. Peter was the ship's expert on alien languages, though he had never actually heard any alien languages before. He was a thin man with thick glasses who loved puzzles more than anything else in the world. "Can you play it?" Peter asked, walking over to join them. Amy pressed a few buttons, and the bridge filled with a sound unlike anything they had ever heard. It was like music, but also like crying. The sound went up and down in waves, and somehow it made everyone who heard it feel sad and scared at the same time. "It's definitely not human," Jake said quietly. "Peter, can you figure out what it means?" Peter was already working, his fingers flying across his computer. "It's going to take time, Captain. This is completely different from any human language. But there are patterns here. Repetition. It might be some kind of message." The bridge was quiet except for the strange alien sound. Everyone was thinking the same thing, but no one wanted to say it out loud. After all these years of looking, they might have finally found proof that humans were not alone in the universe. "How long to decode it?" Jake asked. "Give me a few hours, maybe less if I'm lucky," Peter said, not looking up from his work. Jake nodded and walked back to his command chair. He pressed a button that would send a message back to Earth. Admiral Lisa Hayes would want to know about this immediately. The message would take 6 hours to reach Earth, and her reply would take another 6 hours to get back to them. 2 hours later, Peter stood up suddenly. "I've got it," he said, his voice shaking. "Captain, you need to hear this." The crew gathered around as Peter played the decoded message. The voice was clearly not human, but the words were now in English, thanks to Peter's computer program. "To anyone who can hear this message, we are the Zalari. Our worlds are dying. A great darkness comes from the void between stars. They consume everything. They have taken our outer colonies. They have taken our trade worlds. Soon they will take our home. We have fought for 50 years, but we are losing. They are too many. They are too strong. If anyone receives this message, please help us. We do not want to die. We do not want our children to die. They call themselves the Vex High, and they eat worlds. Please, if you can hear this, help us." The message repeated, over and over, the same desperate cry for help. The bridge was completely silent for a long moment. Then Amy spoke in a whisper. "Captain, what do we do?" Before Jake could answer, his communication system beeped. Admiral Hayes was calling from Earth. Jake accepted the call, and Lisa's stern face appeared on the main screen. "Captain Morrison, I received your message about the alien signal. What's your current situation?" Jake quickly explained what they had learned. Admiral Hayes listened without interrupting, her expression growing more serious with each word. "Captain," she said when he was finished, "I'm ordering you to return to Earth immediately. Do not investigate this signal. Do not make contact with these aliens. Come home now." Jake looked around his bridge. He saw the faces of his crew, all of them thinking the same thing he was thinking. Somewhere out there, an entire species was dying, and they were asking for help. "Admiral," Jake said slowly, "with respect, I don't think we can do that." "Excuse me?" Lisa's voice was sharp. "These people are dying. They're asking for help. We can't just turn around and pretend we never heard them. Captain, we don't know anything about these aliens or their enemies. This could be a trap. You could be putting your entire crew in danger." Jake looked at Amy, who nodded. He looked at Peter, who was staring at the message on his screen. He looked at his other officers, all of them waiting for his decision. "Admiral, I'm going to investigate the source of this signal. If there's a chance we can help these people, we have to try. It's the right thing to do." Lisa stared at him for a long moment. "Captain, if you disobey this order, you'll face a court. Marshal when you return to Earth. I understand, Admiral. But I can't live with myself if I turn away from people who need help." The communication ended, and Jake turned to his crew. "Anyone who doesn't want to be part of this can take a shuttle back toward Earth. No questions asked." Nobody moved. Amy spoke for all of them. "Where you go, we go, Captain." Jake smiled for the first time in days. "Then let's go save some aliens." Set course for the Zalari system. Maximum speed. The Horizon turned toward the unknown, carrying its crew into danger they could not imagine. Behind them, Earth grew smaller and smaller until it was just another star in the darkness. Ahead of them waited an enemy that had been killing worlds for thousands of years. But the Horizon was not just any ship, and humans were not just any species. They were about to learn why. The Horizon dropped out of hyperspace 3 days later, and everyone on the bridge gasped at what they saw. The Zilari star system was a war zone. Massive ships that looked like they were made of metal and flesh were attacking smaller, more elegant vessels that glowed with soft blue light. Captain Jake Morrison stood at the front of the bridge, staring at the battle happening in front of them. The alien ships were huge, some of them as big as moons. They had no smooth lines or clean edges. Instead, they looked like they had grown rather than been built, with spikes and tentacles and parts that moved like they were alive. "My God," whispered Dr. Peter Collins. "What are those things?" Chief Engineer Tony Rodriguez was already scanning the enemy ships with his instruments. Tony was a short, stocky man who could fix anything and understood machines better than most people understood themselves. "Captain, these readings don't make sense. Those ships aren't just made of metal. They're partly alive. They're like some kind of horrible mix of machine and animal." Lieutenant Amy Carter was trying to contact the smaller ships, the ones that were clearly losing the battle. "Captain, I'm getting a response from one of the Zalari vessels." The main screen flickered, and suddenly they were looking at an alien face. The creature looked almost human, but with larger eyes and skin that was slightly blue. It wore some kind of uniform, and behind it, Jake could see other aliens running around what was clearly a damaged ship. "I am Elder Kira Veltar of the Zalari Defense Fleet," the alien said. Its voice was musical, like the distress signal they had heard. "Are you the ones who received our call for help?" "Yes," Jake said, stepping forward. "I'm Captain Jake Morrison of the human ship HMS Horizon. We came as soon as we could." Elder Veltar's large eyes widened. "Humans? We have never heard of your species. You must leave immediately. The Vexhi will destroy you. They destroy everything." "Tell us about them," Jake said. "What are we fighting?" "They are not from our galaxy," Elder Veltar explained quickly, while explosions lit up the space behind it. They came from the void between stars. They consume everything they touch. Planets, ships, people. They turn it all into more of themselves. They have already eaten 17 of our star systems. We have been fighting them for 50 years, but we cannot win. They are led by something called the consuming mind. It learns from every battle and makes the HFY stronger. On the tactical display, Tony could see that the Zellari ships were almost gone. Only a few dozen remained, and they were badly damaged. The HFY had hundreds of their biomechanical vessels, and more were arriving every minute. "Captain," Tony said urgently, "one of those big ugly ships is turning toward us. I think they've noticed we're here." Jake looked at the screen. A HFY vessel that looked like a cross between a squid and a battleship was moving in their direction. It was easily 10 times the size of the horizon. "Red alert," Jake ordered. "All hands to battle stations." "Tony, can our weapons hurt those things?" "I don't know, Captain, but we're about to find out." The HFY ship opened fire first. Streams of some kind of energy weapon that looked like liquid light reached out toward the horizon. Jake's ship twisted and turned, avoiding most of the shots, but some of them hit the shields. "Shields at 70%, reported Lieutenant Ben Parker from the weapons station. Ben was young and had never been in a real battle before, but his hands were steady as he prepared to fire back. "Return fire," Jake ordered. "All weapons." The horizon's weapons lit up the darkness. Missiles, energy beams, and kinetic rounds slammed into the HFY ship. To everyone's surprise, the alien vessel staggered under the attack. Pieces of its biomechanical hull broke off and floated away. "We're hurting it," Ben said, amazed. "Our weapons are actually working." "Keep firing," Jake ordered. "Don't give." It time to recover. The battle lasted for 20 minutes. The horizon was fast and could dodge most of the HFY attacks, while the alien ship was big but slow. Finally, after taking dozens of hits, the HFY vessel began to break apart. It died like a living thing, with what sounded like screams coming from its hull. "Target destroyed," Ben reported, breathing hard. On the screen, Elder Veltar was staring at them with amazement. "How did you do that?" "We have been fighting them for 50 years, and we have never seen one of their ships die so quickly." "Human weapons," Jake said simply. "We're good at breaking things." But their celebration was short-lived. Tony's instruments were showing more HFY ships moving toward them. Big ones. "Captain, we need to go," Tony said. "There are 3 more of those things coming, and they're even bigger than the first one." Jake looked at the tactical display. The remaining Zellari ships were scattered and badly damaged. Most of them wouldn't survive another attack. "Elder Veltar, can your remaining ships jump to hyperspace?" "Some of them, yes, but we cannot leave our homeworld. Our families are there. Our children." Jake understood. He wouldn't abandon Earth either, no matter what was coming for it. But he also knew that staying here meant everyone would die. "How long before those ships reach us?" he asked Tony. 10 minutes, maybe less." Jake made a decision that would change everything. "Elder Veltar, we're going to help you evacuate as many of your people as possible. But then we all have to leave. If we stay here, we all die. If we leave, we can get help and come back stronger." "Help? From where?" Elder Veltar asked. "From Earth, from humanity. We don't leave our friends behind." The next few minutes were chaos. The Zellari ships that could still move began picking up escape pods and shuttles from their damaged homeworld. The horizon used its tractor beams to help, pulling as many small craft as possible into its landing bays. The HFY ships were getting closer. Jake could see them on the screen now, massive things that looked like they were made of nightmares. They moved through space like sharks swimming through dark water. "Captain, we're out of time," Amy said. "If we don't leave now, we won't be able to." Jake looked at the screen one more time. They had saved maybe a few thousand Zelari, but millions more were still on the planet below. The Vex-High would consume them all. Elder Veltar, I promise you this, Jake said. We will return. Humanity will return. And when we do, we'll have enough ships to make these monsters sorry they ever left their dark space. I believe you, Elder Veltar said quietly. There is something about your species. Something different. Something dangerous. The Horizon and the surviving Zelari ships jumped to hyperspace just as the first Vex-High vessel reached the planet. Jake watched on the long-range sensors as the alien world began to die, consumed by creatures that turned everything they touched into more of themselves. But as the Horizon traveled through hyperspace toward Earth, Jake was already planning. The Vex-High had just made a terrible mistake. They had attacked someone under human protection, and humanity was about to show them what that meant. In the darkness of space, something ancient and hungry felt a new presence. The consuming mind had noticed the small human ship and the damage it had done. For the first time in 1,000 years, it was curious. What were these humans? How had they destroyed a Vex-High vessel so easily? The consuming mind decided it wanted to learn more about this new species. It would study them. It would understand them, and then it would consume them, just like all the others. But the consuming mind had never met anything like humanity before. It was about to learn why humans were the most dangerous species in the galaxy. The HM's Horizon arrived at Earth 2 weeks later, carrying refugees from a dying world and news that would change human history forever. Captain Jake Morrison stood in the center of the largest military courtroom on Earth, facing 5 of the most powerful people in the human government. General Robert Kane sat at the center of the panel, his face like stone. He was a man who had fought in 3 wars and never lost a battle. Next to him sat Admiral Sandra Wells, the head of the Earth Navy. She was known for being tough but fair, and right now she looked very unhappy. Captain Morrison, General Kane said, his voice cold, you disobeyed a direct order from Admiral Hayes. You put your crew and ship in danger. You brought unknown aliens to Earth. Do you have anything to say for yourself? Jake looked around the room. In the back, he could see members of his crew. Amy Carter gave him a small nod. Dr. Peter Collins was translating for Elder Veltar and the other Zelari refugees. Tony Rodriguez looked ready to fight anyone who tried to blame his captain. General, Jake said, I saw an entire species about to be wiped out. I saw creatures that turn planets into food. I saw an enemy that's heading straight for Earth. Yes, I disobeyed orders, but I brought back information that could save our world. Information about an enemy we might never have met if you hadn't interfered, said Admiral Wells. Dr. Michelle Foster, Earth's top scientist for studying alien life, stood up from her seat. She was a woman in her 50s with gray hair and eyes. That missed nothing. Actually, Admiral, that's not true. I've been studying the samples Captain Morrison brought back. The Vex-High were already coming this way. Our solar system is directly in their path. The room became very quiet. Michelle walked to the front and turned on a holographic display. It showed the galaxy with red dots marking where the Vex-High had attacked. Look at the pattern, Michelle said. They're not attacking randomly. They're moving in a straight line toward the center of the galaxy. Earth is right in their path. Captain Morrison didn't bring this threat to us. He gave us warning about a threat that was already coming. General Kane leaned forward. How long do we have? Based on their speed and the distance they still need to travel, maybe 6 months. Maybe less if they move faster than we think. The room exploded with worried voices. Jake waited for the noise to die down, then spoke again. General, I've seen what these things can do. The Zelari fought them for 50 years with everything they had, and they lost. But our weapons work against them. We can hurt them. We can kill them. But only if we're ready. President Jonathan Clark, who had been listening quietly, finally spoke. What do you need? Every ship we have, Jake said. Every weapon. Every person willing to fight. The Vexhai are not just coming for Earth. They're coming for every living thing in the galaxy. If we don't stop them here, they'll consume everything. The trial ended quickly after that. Jake was cleared of all charges and promoted to admiral. More importantly, President Clark authorized the largest military buildup in human history. Every shipyard in the solar system began working day and night to build new vessels. Every weapon factory started making new types of ammunition based on what they had learned from the Vexhai samples. Admiral Lisa Hayes, who had been angry at Jake for disobeying her orders, now found herself in command of the largest fleet humanity had ever assembled. The 7th Fleet would have over 400 ships, from massive battleships to small, fast fighters. The flagship was the UES Defiance, a new class of warship built specifically to fight the Vexhai. Jake would command it personally with his old crew from Heiss. The Horizon. Amy Carter became his communications officer again. Tony Rodriguez was promoted to chief engineer of the entire fleet. Dr. Peter Collins worked day and night to understand more about the Vexhai and their mysterious leader, the consuming mind. But the most important addition to the fleet was the Miasa Zelari. Elder Veltar and his people had offered to help, bringing their knowledge of Vexhai tactics and their own advanced technology. The Zelari ships were fast and elegant, perfect for hit-and-run attacks. Their weapons used a different kind of energy that seemed to hurt the biomechanical. Vexhai ships in ways human weapons COULDN single quotes T. Commander Steve Walsh, Jake's old friend from the academy, was put in charge of training the combined human Zelari fleet. Steve was a man who understood that the best way to win a war was to make sure your people knew what they were doing before the shooting started. The Vexhai are not like any enemy we've ever fought, Steve told the gathered captains and commanders. They don't surrender. They don't retreat. They don't negotiate. They consume and they adapt. Every battle teaches them something new. Every victory makes them stronger. So how do we beat them? Asked Captain Lisa Brown, one of the younger officers who had been given command of a new fast attack ship. We don't fight fair, Steve said with a grin. We use every advantage we have. We're faster than they are. We're smarter than they are. And we're more creative than they are. They've been fighting the same way for thousands of years. We're going to show them some new tricks. The months of preparation went by quickly. The fleet practiced formations, tested new weapons, and learned to work together. Human and Zelari crews trained side by side, sharing knowledge and tactics. Dr. Collins made the most important discovery of all. By studying the Vexhai communications, he learned that the consuming mind was not with the main fleet. It was hidden somewhere in the darkness between galaxies, controlling its creatures from a distance. It's like a puppet master, Collins explained to Jake. The consuming mind pulls the strings, but it's not actually on the battlefield. That's why the Vexhai can adapt so quickly. They're all connected to a single intelligence that learns from every encounter. Can we cut the strings? Jake asked. Maybe. But first, we'd have to find where the consuming mind is hiding. And that could be anywhere in the vast empty space between galaxies. 2 weeks before the fleet was scheduled to leave Earth, the long-range sensors detected something that made everyone's blood run cold. The Vexhai had changed course. Instead of continuing toward Earth at their previous speed, they were moving faster and in a different direction. Where are they going? President Clark asked during an emergency meeting. Michelle Foster, looked up from her calculations, her face pale. They're heading for the Centauri system. There are 3 human colonies there. Nearly 1 million people. They're testing us, Jake. Realized the consuming mind knows we're preparing for war. It wants to see what we'll do. We can't let them destroy those colonies, Admiral Hayes said. But if we leave now, we won't be fully prepared. Jake looked around the room at all the worried faces. Then we go with what we have. The fleet launches tomorrow. We'll finish our preparations on the way. The next morning, the largest fleet in human history left Earth orbit. 400 ships of every size and type, carrying 200,000 human and Zalari crew members. At the center of the formation was the UES Defiance, with Admiral Jake Morrison on the bridge dot as Earth fell behind him. Jake stood at the front of his bridge and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, an ancient evil was waiting for them. The consuming mind had been destroying worlds for thousands of years, and it thought humanity would be just another species to consume. But the consuming mind had never fought humans before. It had never met a species that got more dangerous when it was angry. It had never encountered people who would cross the galaxy to protect strangers, who would risk everything to save someone they had never met. The Vex High were about to learn why humans called their fleet the Doom Fleet, and the consuming mind was about to discover that some prey fights back. The human Zalari fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Centauri system and found horror waiting for them. The VSI had already consumed 2 of the 3 human colonies. The planets that had once been green and full of life were now dead, gray balls of rock floating in space. Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, watching the tactical display with anger burning in his chest. The 3rd planet, New Australia, was still alive, but barely. Hundreds of Vex-High bioships surrounded it like vultures, slowly draining the life from the world below. How many people are still down there? Jake asked. Lieutenant Amy Carter checked her instruments. About 300,000, sir. They're in underground shelters, but the Vex-High are digging them out. And the enemy fleet? Chief Engineer Tony Rodriguez ran his scans. I count 800 Vex-High vessels, sir. They're bigger than the ones we fought before. The consuming mind has been building new ships. Jake looked at the numbers on his screen. The human fleet had 400 ships. The Vex-High had 800, but humans had never been good at math when it came to fighting. Admiral Hayes, Jake said into his communicator, we're going to split the fleet. Take half the ships and start evacuation of the planet. I'll take the other half and keep the Vex-High busy. Jake, there are too many of them. Admiral Lisa Hayes replied from her command ship. We should call for backup. There is no backup, Jake said quietly. We're all humanity has. And those people down there don't have time to wait for reinforcements. The fleet split into 2 groups. Admiral Hayes took the larger, slower ships and headed for the planet to begin evacuation. Jake took the faster attack ships and moved toward the main Vex-High fleet. The battle began when the first Vex-High ship noticed the approaching humans. It was a massive thing that looked like a cross between a whale and a spider, with tentacles that could crush a smaller ship. The creature turned toward the Defiance and opened fire. Jake's ship twisted through space, dodging the energy blasts. All ships, attack pattern Delta. Hit them hard and fast, then get out of there. The human attack ships spread out like a pack of wolves, each one targeting a different Vex-High vessel. The space around New Australia lit up with weapons fire and explosions. Captain Lisa Brown, commanding the fast attack ship Fury, led her squadron in a diving attack on one of the larger Vex-High creatures. Her weapons tore through its biomechanical hull, and the alien ship began to die with sounds like screaming. Target destroyed, Brown reported, moving to the next one. But the Vex-High were learning. Jake watched as the enemy ships began to change their formation, adapting to the human tactics. Some of them grew thicker armor, where the human weapons had been most effective. Others developed new weapons that fired faster. They're adapting, Tony reported. The consuming mind is learning from our attacks. Then we need to attack differently. Jake said, Tony, remember what you discovered about using our hyperspace drives as weapons? Tony grinned. Yes, sir. But it's dangerous. We could tear ourselves apart. Do it. The Defiance moved toward the largest Vex-High ship, a monster the size of a small moon. At the last second, Tony activated the hyperspace drive, but instead of jumping to another location, he created a controlled rupture in space-time. The effect was devastating. The hyperspace rupture tore through the Vex-High ship like a knife through paper. The creature tried to regenerate, but the damage was too severe. It broke apart and died, its pieces floating away into the darkness. New tactic, Jake broadcast. To the fleet, hyperspace ruptures. Use your drives as weapons. The human ships began using their faster-than-light drives to create tiers in space. The Vex-High had never seen anything like it. Their biomechanical ships, designed to adapt to energy weapons and missiles, had no defense against attacks that came from the fabric of space itself. But the battle was far from over. The Vex-High had numbers, and they were learning fast. 4. Every enemy ship the humans destroyed, 2 more seemed to take its place, near the planet. Admiral Hayes was running her own desperate battle. The evacuation ships were trying to load as many people as possible, while fighting off Vex-High creatures that burrowed up from the planet's surface. Commander Steve Walsh, leading the evacuation effort, watched as one of his transport ships was attacked by a Vex-High creature that looked like a giant worm with metal teeth. The monster wrapped around the ship and began to crush it. "This is Transport Ship 7, came the panicked voice over the radio. "We're being crushed. We can't break free." Steve made a decision that would save hundreds of lives. He flew his own ship directly into the Vex-High creature, using his hyperspace drive to tear it apart. His ship was destroyed, but the transport was saved. "Commander Walsh is down," reported one of his pilots, "but the transport got away." The evacuation continued, but time was running out. The Vex-High were sending more and more ships toward the planet, and Jake's attack fleet was getting overwhelmed. That's when Dr. Peter Collins, working from the Defiance's science station, made a crucial discovery. He had been monitoring the Vex-High communications throughout the battle, and he noticed something strange. "Admiral," Collins said urgently, "the consuming mind isn't just controlling these ships. It's learning from our tactics in real time. But there's a delay. A small one, but it's there." "What kind of delay?" Jake asked, dodging fire from 3 Vex-High ships at once. "About 2 seconds. The information has to travel from here to wherever. The consuming mind is hiding, and then back again. If we can coordinate our attacks perfectly, we can hit them before they can adapt." Jake understood immediately. "All ships, listen carefully. We're going to hit them with everything we have, all at the same time. No warning, no build-up, just pure, coordinated destruction." The human fleet formed up for one massive attack. Every ship targeted a different Vex-High vessel. They waited for Jake's signal, weapons charged and ready. "Now!" Jake shouted .400. Human ships fired at the same instant. The space around New Australia became a storm of energy and destruction. The Vex-High ships, unable to adapt quickly enough, were torn apart by the coordinated assault dot in the space of 30 seconds. The humans destroyed over 200 Vex-High vessels. The surviving enemy ships began to retreat, pulling back toward the edge of the system. "We did it," Amy said, hardly believing it. "We actually did it." But Jake was looking at his long-range sensors, and what he saw made his blood run cold. More Vex-High ships were coming, thousands of them emerging from hyperspace at the edge of the system. The consuming mind called for reinforcements. Jake realized this was just the advance guard. Admiral Hayes contacted him from the evacuation zone. Jake, we've got most of the people off the planet, but there are still thousands down there, and our ships are damaged. We can't fight another battle like that. Jake looked at the tactical display. The new Vex-High fleet was massive, much larger than anything they had faced before. But humanity had learned something important in this battle. The consuming mind could be outmaneuvered. It could be surprised. It could be beaten. All ships, prepare to retreat, Jake ordered. We're going back to Earth. What about the people still on the planet? Captain Brown asked. Jake was quiet for a long moment. We'll come back for them. But first, we need to prepare for the real war. The consuming mind knows about us now. It knows we're dangerous. It's going to come for Earth with everything it has. The human fleet jumped to hyperspace, leaving New Australia behind. On the planet below, the remaining colonists went deeper underground, hiding from the Vex-High and waiting for rescue. In the darkness between galaxies, the consuming mind processed what it had learned. These humans were different from any species it had encountered before. They were unpredictable. They were creative. They were dangerous. For the first time in 1,000 years, the consuming mind felt something it had almost forgotten: concern. These humans would need to be dealt with carefully. It would need to send more ships, many more ships. The consuming mind began to call its scattered fleets from across the galaxy. It would gather everything it had and crush this new threat before it could grow stronger. But the consuming mind had made a mistake. It had shown humanity what was coming, and humans always fought hardest when they knew their backs were against the wall. The real war was about to begin. 6 months after the Battle of New Australia, the solar system had become the greatest fortress in human history. Every asteroid had been turned into a weapons platform. Every moon carried defense systems. Earth itself was surrounded by a network of battle stations that could destroy entire fleets. Admiral Jake Morrison stood in the command center of the UES Defiance, now the flagship of the largest military force humanity had ever assembled. The 7th Fleet had grown to over 1,000 ships, including vessels built with combined human and Zalari technology that were faster and more deadly than anything that had come before. Admiral Lieutenant Amy Carter reported from her station. Long range. Sensors are detecting the Vex-High fleet. They're 3 light-years away and closing fast. Jake walked to the main display and studied the readings. What he saw made his heart sink. The consuming mind had gathered every Vex-High ship in the galaxy. There were thousands of them, maybe tens of thousands. Biomechanical monsters of every size and shape, all moving toward Earth like a wave of death. How many? Jake asked quietly. Chief Engineer Tony Rodriguez, now the Chief Engineer of the entire fleet, ran the calculations. I count at least 10,000. Ships, sir. Maybe more. Some of them are bigger than anything we've seen before. Elder Kira Veltar, who had become Jake's advisor on Vex-High tactics, looked at the display with her large, sad eyes. The consuming mind has called in fleets from across the galaxy. This is not just an attack on your world. This is everything it has. If it loses here, it will have nothing left. Jake nodded grimly. Then we make sure it loses everything. The next few hours were filled with preparation. The human Zalari fleet took positions throughout the solar system. Some ships hid behind planets and moons, ready to ambush the approaching enemy. Others formed into attack groups that could strike fast and disappear before the Vex-High could respond. Dr. Peter Collins, working with a team of human and Zalari scientists, had spent months studying the consuming mind's communications. They had made a breakthrough that could change everything. "Admiral," Collins said, approaching Jake's command chair, "we found it. We found where the consuming mind is hiding." Jake turned to face him. "Where?" "It's in a pocket dimension, a space between spaces, but we can reach it. The problem is, someone has to get close enough to open a portal. Very close. Close enough to be destroyed by the Vex-High defenses. How close? Right in the middle of their main fleet." Jake understood. It was a suicide mission. Whoever went, after the consuming mind, would never come back. "I'll do it," Jake said without hesitation. "No, sir," said Captain Lisa Brown, who had been promoted to command her own battle group. "You're needed here to command the fleet. I'll take a small task force and go after the consuming mind." Before Jake could argue, alarms began sounding throughout the ship. The Vex-High had arrived. The enemy fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the solar system like a plague of locusts. They were even more terrifying up close. The largest ships were the size of small moons, covered in spines and tentacles that moved like they were alive. Smaller vessels swarmed around them like angry insects. "All ships," Jake broadcast to the fleet, "this is it. Everything we've trained for, everything we've built, everything we are as a species, comes down to this moment. They think they can consume us like they consumed all the others. Let's show them what humans do to monsters." The battle began when the first Vex-High ships reached Mars. The human defense platforms opened fire, sending streams of energy and swarms of missiles at the approaching creatures. The Vex-High ships absorbed some of the damage, but the humans had learned their lessons well. The weapons were designed specifically to hurt biomechanical targets. Admiral Lisa Hayes, commanding the main battle line near Jupiter, watched as her ships engaged the enemy advance guard. The space around the giant planet became a storm of light and destruction. "They're adapting faster than before," Hayes reported. "The consuming mind is learning from every shot we fire." "Then we need to keep changing our tactics," Jake replied. All ships switched to Tactic 7, hyperspace hit and run. The human ships began using their hyperspace drives to appear behind enemy vessels, fire, and disappear before the Vex-High could respond. It was working, but there were so many enemy ships that destroying them one at a time would take forever. Near Earth, Tony Rodriguez was overseeing the planet's final defenses. Giant orbital cannons fired continuously at the approaching Vex-High, while smaller ships darted between the massive enemy vessels like flies attacking elephants. "Sir," one of his technicians reported, "the big ones are getting through. 3 of those moon-sized ships are heading straight for Earth." Tony watched as the massive Vex-High creatures approached his home world. Their tentacles reached out already, beginning to drain the life from Earth's atmosphere. "Not today," Tony said grimly. He activated a weapon that no one except Jake knew existed. Hidden in Earth's moon was a hyperspace cannon, a device that could tear holes in space itself. Tony aimed it at the largest Vex-High ship and fired. The beam of twisted space-time hit the creature and tore it apart from the inside. The massive ship screamed as it died, its biomechanical parts scattering across space-dot, but for every Vex-High ship the humans destroyed, more seemed to take their place. The enemy fleet was just too big. That's when Captain Brown made her move. She had gathered a small group of the fastest ships in the fleet, volunteers who knew they probably wouldn't be coming back. "Admiral Morrison," Brown said over the radio, "we're going in. If we can reach the consuming mind, we can end this." Jake watched on his tactical display as Brown's small task force dove straight into the center of the Vex-High fleet. The enemy ships turned to intercept them, but the human vessels were too fast and too small to hit easily. Brown's ship, the Fury, led the charge. Behind her came 12 other vessels, each one piloted by someone who had decided that saving humanity was worth their life. The HFY threw everything they had at the small human force. Energy beams, biomechanical missiles, and creatures that looked like flying weapons all tried to stop them. 3 human ships were destroyed, then 5, then 8. But Brown and her remaining ships kept going, pushing deeper into the enemy formation until they reached the very center of the HFY fleet. "I can see it," Brown reported, her voice calm. "Despite the chaos around her, there's something here. A ship that doesn't look like the others. It's opening some kind of portal." Dr. Collins, monitoring from the Defiance, confirmed what Brown was seeing. "That's it. That's the gateway to the consuming mind's hiding place. You need to get through that portal." Brown's ship, damaged and barely holding together, flew straight into the portal. Behind her, the last 3 ships of her task force followed. They emerged in a place that didn't follow the normal rules of space. It was a pocket dimension, filled with swirling energy and floating structures that looked like they were made of crystallized thought. At the center of it all was the consuming mind itself. It was not what Brown had expected. Instead of a monster, she found herself looking at something that might have once been beautiful. The consuming mind was a vast intelligence housed in a structure that looked like a mixture of organic brain tissue and quantum computers. "So," a voice spoke directly into her mind, "you are the humans who have been causing me so much trouble." "We're the humans who are going to stop you," Brown replied, preparing her ship's weapons. "Stop me? I am eternal. I have consumed 1,000 galaxies. I have turned entire star clusters into extensions of my will. What can you possibly do to stop me?" Brown smiled, even though she knew the consuming mind couldn't see her. "We can show you something you've never seen before. We can show you what it means to choose hope over hunger." The consuming mind paused, confused by her words. In that moment of hesitation, Brown did something that changed everything. Instead of attacking, she opened a communication channel to the consuming mind and transmitted something no one expected: the collected memories of everyone who had died fighting the HFY, the Zelari who had sacrificed themselves to save their families, the humans who had died at New Australia, the countless other species that had chosen to fight rather than surrender. The consuming mind was overwhelmed by the emotions it felt. For millions of years, it had only known hunger and the need to consume. It had forgotten what it meant to choose sacrifice for others, to fight for something greater than yourself. "What is this?" the consuming mind asked, its voice now uncertain. "It's what makes us different from you," Brown said gently. "We don't just survive. We live. We love. We sacrifice for each other. And we never, ever give up." The consuming mind was silent for a long time. When it spoke again, its voice was different, smaller, more sad than angry. "I remember now," it said quietly. "Long ago, before the hunger, my people were like yours. We loved, we sacrificed, we hoped, but when our galaxy began to die, we chose consumption over death. We thought it was survival. We didn't realize it was just another kind of extinction." "It's not too late," Brown said. "You can choose differently now." In the real universe, the HFY fleet suddenly stopped attacking. The biomechanical ships hung motionless in space, as if waiting for new orders.